Okay, so the problem will state something like this. Find solutions of P of X and its factored form. Okay, and then I'm going to give you what P of X is, but your test is going to, or your quiz, I'm sorry, is going to say the same thing. Find the solutions of P of X, and then I'm just going to give you a different P of X equation. Okay, I'm going to say P of X is equal to x to the fourth minus 2x to the third minus x squared minus 4x minus 6. Okay, holy cow, that's a lot. Okay, step one on this would be to figure out what the real roots are. Okay, so what I would say is using, well, actually, let's see, should I have you use your calculator? Yeah, we'll just have you use your calculator on this. So what I want you to do is we're going to graph this out on your calculator. Okay, so do that right now. And if you graph this on your calculator, it's going to be a lot easier, so you don't have to do, you could do less math essentially by doing it this way, so it will help you to do it. Okay, so on your calculator in the y1, put that function in there. So it's going to be x to the fourth minus 2x to the 3, 1, 2, 3, minus x squared minus 4x minus 6. Okay, and then I also want you to graph 0 because we're trying to look for the intersection points of 0. That's remainder theorem. Wherever you find a value, and if it's equal to 0 when you plug it into that polynomial, then you know that it's a factor. So that's what we're going to do. Zoom 6 is going to zoom fit it to the screen, and you see something like this. Okay, right now from this graph, you can see that there's two solutions, 1, 2. Okay, and you can kind of see their values. That looks like -1. That looks like 3. Sometimes it's decimals though, so to be sure, what you need to do is do second calc 5. Find the intersect. So again, second calc, and then 5 is the intersection point. You should have done this in other classes, but if not, I'm showing you right now. So second calc 5 with this, and you want to find the intersection between the blue graph, so hit enter, and then the red graph, which is just the 0. Make sure you graph 0, because sometimes people aren't paying attention and they forget to graph 0. Then where it says guess, just hit enter, and then what it does is it finds the value right there as -1. So what I'm going to do right here is one of the solutions is -1. So I'm going to write that over here. Solutions, x is equal to -1. Okay. Then we're going to do this one over here, 1, 2, 3. It looks like it's 3, but to find this intersection, to make sure it's not a decimal, hit second calc 5, enter, enter. But when it says guess, move the little cursor closer to this one. Otherwise, it's just going to find that intersection again. Then just hit enter, and then it finds it as 3. Cool. So now you know another solution is going to be 3 as well. If you don't use your calculator to find these roots, then it's going to take you a very long time to do this problem, because then you're just guessing and checking. So you want your calculator to do all the work. So graph it, grab 0, and find where it intersects. That will help you greatly. Okay. Now that we have the solutions, what we can do is write our factors for these. Okay, the factor for x equals -1 is going to be x plus 1. So that's one of the factors. Another factor is going to be x minus 3. Okay, these two are factors of this P of X equation. But how many factors should we have? 4. We have 2. So if you stopped here, you would get half credit essentially, because you only did half of the problem. You should have 4, and we only have 2. Now, the other 2 are not real. They're not real numbers, so they're imaginary numbers. So we have to figure out what those imaginary numbers are, and your calculator, unfortunately, will not help you with that. So we have to do the process that we've been doing this past week, essentially. So we are going to take that P of X, that x to the fourth minus 2x cubed minus x squared minus 4x minus 6, and we're going to divide this by our factors. Okay, we're going to divide it by these two things right. Oops, those aren't factors, those are solutions. We're going to divide it by these two things right here. We're going to divide it by x plus 1 first. It doesn't matter the order though, you're going to get the same answer. But once we divide one of those x's out, you're going to have an x to the third equation. Then we're going to divide another x out, then you'll get an x squared equation. And when we have x squared, to find those solutions, we can just use quadratic formula. Okay, so I just threw out a lot of words at you, but it'll make sense as we go. So what we're doing, what we're doing here is we're going to divide out each of these factors. You'll get a quadratic, and we can solve the quadratic using quadratic formula. Okay, but let's do this one first. Okay, so you have to think, what do you multiply this x by to get x to the fourth? Only look at the leading term. This would be x to the third. Then you're going to end up with x to the fourth. Oops, I was going to write x to the third. Plus x to the third, because you would multiply by each of these things right here. Okay, you do have to subtract, and this is where it really comes in handy to use your notes, so you don't have to memorize everything, all the steps. You can just look, do I add or subtract? Look in your notes, you'll see that it's subtract. Okay. Somebody wrote, one of the things they hate about math in that survey in the beginning of the year was they hate having to memorize everything. So that's why I'm letting you do open notes, because I'm trying to make this as easy as possible. There we go. This cancels, and you're left with negative 2x to the third minus x to the third, which is going to be negative 3x to the third. And then all of this other stuff just drops down. Okay, and then we're just repeating this process. So you think, what multiplies by this x to get negative 3x cubed? Negative 3x squared. Subtracting again. I know these take a long time, but that's why we're only doing one of them. 2x squared minus 4x minus 6. Okay, we're going to multiply this by 2x here. So get the 2x squared plus 2x. And you get negative 6x minus 6, which is awesome because, oops, that should be a minus. There shouldn't be a remainder because x plus 1 is a factor. So if you remember remainder theorem, this is going to be negative 6x minus 6. Everything is going to cancel. So there's no remainder there, which is perfect. Okay. So now we have this equation here. And we need to divide out the x minus 3 to it. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're just repeating the process again, only this time it's going to be x to the third. And once we divide this x out, we're going to have a quadratic, and we can use quadratic formula. Doing this, minus 3. Okay, this one, every time you do the second one, it always goes way faster because so many more things cancel out. So this one's going to be x squared. So you're going to have x cubed minus 3x squared. So if you notice, everything is going to cancel out here. That will generally happen. So cancel, cancel. You're left with 2x minus 6. So you can think, what do you multiply the x by? It would be 2. So then you get 2x minus 6 here. It subtracts off as well. Cancel, cancel. Okay, so then the second one always takes a very short amount of time comparatively than the first one because you got rid of an entire factor for that first one. So, all right, so then we have x squared plus 2. Now, if you want, you can use quadratic formula on this, or this one you can just solve. Okay, so x squared plus 2 is equal to 0. We can find the solutions to this pretty easy. So we're going to subtract 2 to the other side, to both sides, and you get negative 2. We're going to square root both sides, and you'll notice you're left with a square root of a negative. Okay, you can't do square roots of a negative, so you have to pull the I out. So it's going to be plus or minus I times root 2. Okay? So now you found 2 other solutions plus the 2 we had before. So you technically found all the solutions. All right, so it's plus or minus root 2i, or I root 2, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. So now we have the 4 solutions, so we're good with that. Now you just have to make it in factored form. So factored form is just going to be the following. It's going to be x plus 1 times x minus 3 times x minus the positive root 2i, and then x minus the negative 2 root I. So it's always x minus all of those. You could just do a plus plus though if you want. You don't need to actually write it all out. Anyway, this is factored form for p of x. Oops. That's factored form, and this is the solutions here. You answered both things. Yes.
So when like you're starting to divide, so let's just say like x plus 1, like x to the 4th. You put x to the 3rd
because if you look at the leading term, we want whatever we want up here, it has to multiply to get this, multiply by this to get x to the 4th. So x to the 3rd times x is x to the 4th. And the reason why you want to do that is because we're subtracting on the bottom, everything has to cancel out. So if you don't multiply that leading term, the leading term won't cancel out, and the problem becomes impossible. If you are hung up, not just you, but anybody, if you're hung up on long division, I would definitely go back to 221 and practice that, because you're going to have to do this twice tomorrow.